I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and I have another amazing guest, Lee Smith. I'll come back to her in a second, but first let me remind you of why you're here. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview warriors from all walks of life who are aspiring leaders. I interview entrepreneurs, artists, authors, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and they have a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is absolutely no exception. Lee Smith is an awesome warrior. She's a wife, a mother, author, speaker, and presentations consultant with UpCycle Coaching, who guides entrepreneurs to their own stage and to owning their stage with a dynamic presence, certainty, and confidence. She's a creator of the Candy Method for speaking confidently and show host of the UpCycle Your Life on the Win-Win Women Network. It's kind of TV network. It's Heart Win-Win Women. It's WWW. Anyway, in addition to her passion for speaking and high performance, she loves coffee, cooking, and getting outdoors for walks, hikes, and snowshoeing. Hear about that, probably why you're where you are right now, too, in Nevada. Lee is driven to help entrepreneurs and coaches see the best within themselves and to accept no excuses, only excellence. Lee Smith, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in Reno, Nevada?
Well, hello, David, and thank you so much for having me. And it is a beautiful, sunshiny day. We are getting a taste, if you will, of summer. I think, let me see here. We're going to hit 86 degrees today. But we still have snow on the Sierras, and so it's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm just enjoying a beautiful day.
It's one of the things I love about Reno. I've been to Reno a few times and up in that area because you don't have to drive far to go. I mean, here in Dallas, I can find some water, but I can't find mountains they're not very close, or places where I can see snow on the mountaintops or whatever. So that's one of the things that's beautiful about Reno. I think we're going to hit 91 degrees here today, so we might be a little warmer, but I also think that it's supposed to have some potential thunderstorms, which is another factor in the Dallas world. Yeah. So what else is going on? Anything else? You got anything big planned for the weekend?
Oh, what's happening this weekend? Well, I got invited to an Irish festival by a friend who is Irish. However, I'm not Irish. I am Scottish, part Scottish, and I realized that there is also a Scottish festival happening this weekend. So I have a little tug of war between the two, or I might just go and try to visit both. So I love venturing new things, and when there's cultural experiences happening here in the city, I love to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I love those cultural types of events where you can, on a larger scale, really get to see attributes of my son-in-law's last name is McLaughlin. So we're very, there's a lot of Irish in our family. So yeah, I can relate to that. So although Scottish and Irish aren't always on the same page, I've learned that. I had Annalise Landa on my podcast, and I asked something about, I think the Queen was in the news or something, and I got a little bit of a cold response on that, or somebody, or maybe it was, I don't remember, somebody I was over in that neck of the woods. So, well, let's do this. I really, really want to get into your story. I want to hear how you got to where you are today. So let's take a quick break, and we'll hear a little bit of our theme song for the audio audience. It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back with Lee Smith and her story on Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to
All
see.
right, we are back. And Lee,
How many
can't wait to hear this. So tell me, how did you get from where you started to where you are today? And you can start where you want, by the way. I know I have a lot of journeys, so there's a lot of places I could start, but you pick it and we'll go from there.
I know when you've been on the planet for over 50 years, there are a lot of stories you collect along the way. And it's like, yes, where do I even start? And for listeners and viewers alike, if you see my name, it's spelled L-Y, and that is my Vietnamese name. My mom is from Vietnam, and my dad served in the Army during the war, and that is where they met because my mom worked on the military base, and Dad pretty much harassed her until she said yes to the wedding proposal. They got married in Vietnam, and maybe because of that, I'm guessing that she was able to come back to the States with him when his tour of duty was up. And shortly thereafter, I came into the world. And several years later, I was followed by my two younger brothers. And having said that, I was exposed to quite the home environment. And fun fact, if you look at my dad's side and his lineage, our lineage here in the Americas goes all the way back to the day of the Mayflowers. My ancestors just happened to come over at the same time, but on a different ship. So it's amazing to think generation. I have this long history on my dad's side, and yet on my mom's side, I'm the firstborn. And it's like, whoa, I feel like I'm living two timelines at once. So that was an interesting difference. Yeah. And of course, the cultural difference, but also the home environment where my mom, I know she was doing it out of love, and she was both my parents were young when they started the family with me, and they did the best with what, best they could with what they had, truly. And my mom came from this, you love your children through fear. You instill fear, you instill anger, and that's how you show your love. So my mom was really wonderful at telling me all the things I did wrong, where I came up short of perfect, why I was not as good as other children in her circle of friends, all of those things. It's like, why can't you be good enough? When are you going to get this right? I know you're smart, so why can't you get straight A's like so-and-so? When are you going to make me proud? And then my dad, on the other hand, was telling me, Lee, you are amazing. You are such a capable young girl, and you're so smart and so brilliant, and you have so much to give the world, and you're a leader inside of you, and you're going to help others to do the right path. And so I had two voices coming at me with the intention of love, and looking at, yes, my mom, she, if you will, I got that negative impact from my mom, and I got the positive impact from my dad. And while I loved both of my parents, I didn't know who to listen to. My question was, especially at 7, when I came into this awareness of this, was who's telling me the truth about myself? And a divine moment happened for me, because I would play what I called the mirror game. And I would take a mirror. And for those of you who are viewers, you would take a little mirror like this, and I would stare at myself and stare at my reflection and stare at my reflection. And all of a sudden, I could see only my mom's face. And then I started hearing my mom's voice and all the things that she would continuously tell me. And I thought, okay, well, I don't like that so much, but okay, that was the experience. And I closed my eyes and I would shake it off, and then I would stare again. And I wondered this time, having seen my mom, can I stare at myself long enough until I see just my dad's face? And guess what? That happened. I stared at myself long enough, and all I could see was my dad's face. And then I heard my dad's voice, all the positivity that came from him. I thought, that's interesting. Closed my eyes and I shook it off. I want to see me. And so I looked at me and I thought, now what do I hear? And I found my inner voice, and I realized I have the power of choice. I get to choose what to say to myself. And that became a foundational start to the rest of my journey of who I've become today. And a year later, I was very, very confident as a reader. I loved reading aloud in my small reading groups, in the classroom, in my Bible school classes. My Bible school teacher asked me, Lee, you're such an amazing reader. Would you read the scriptures at church service sometime? And I said, yes, because all I cared about was reading. It was something I loved doing. So yes, let's do this. And I wasn't thinking of it as a public speaking event or anything like that. And when the day came and I approached the ambo and I got up in front of the big book and I'm reading the scriptures aloud, and there's a congregation of over 300 people, and all I saw or remember seeing are smiling faces back at me. And now, of course, I know as an adult, these faces were just, warm-hearted people who, of course, are going to smile at this little girl up there doing this reading. And it wasn't like I was doing something amazing. And truth be told, the magic happened for me when I walked away from the sanctuary. And I felt this shiver go through my body. And I remember thinking, what is that feeling? And how do I get more of that? And it was from that point forward that I would raise my hand to get in front of the classroom or in front of a group of people, any chance that I got to share an idea or share a thought or read aloud if that's what it happened to be. And I wanted to know, can I keep your interest? Can I get you to smile? There were a couple of times I would try to get you to laugh, but I thought of myself as a horrible joke teller. So I wasn't trying to pursue the comedy route, that's for sure. And in doing this, it wasn't about being the center of attention, because that is so not who I am. And it wasn't about being a know-it-all, because that's definitely not who I am either. And there were plenty of times when I would shrink in my seat with the please don't call on me thoughts. But when I did have something to share, I wanted to know how it landed. So I did this through, middle school years and into high school. I was very active with my youth ministry. I was very active in the leadership. So I spoke in front of 500 to 1,500 kids. And by this time in my life, I had experienced suicide attempts where I was 13 at the time. And I was, granted, there were a lot of things that led up to it. Mm-hmm. But the day that I chose to do this, I was definitely in a place of, the world doesn't want me. I don't want to be in it either. And I had heard this phrase, stop the planet, I want to get off. And that was a massive, massive feeling I was experiencing. And this was a day that I had the house to myself. And I knew that my dad would keep his Swiss Army knife on the top of the refrigerator. So I grabbed the little stool, because I wasn't quite tall enough to reach it myself, but stepped up on the stool, reached up overhead, and sure enough, the Army knife was there. And I took it with me downstairs to the bottom part of the house, and I sat by the sliding glass door, and there was a really gray day at that time. And so not a lot of light coming through, and I knelt down and started cutting away at myself. And it wasn't just cutting physically. I was cutting emotionally and mentally and spiritually and verbally, and just, you're not good enough. You're not worthy. You're a horrible daughter, and terrible friend, and all of these things. Anything that I could come up with. I just didn't have a single positive thing to say about myself. And I was doing all of these things. And then an interesting thing happened as I was cutting away. The sun broke through the clouds, and in a single beam, it came through the woods in my backyard, and it came through the sliding glass door, and it seemed to wrap around me. And I didn't notice it at first, because I was just so engrossed in berating myself and cutting away. And then I heard this voice, my child, what are you doing? And I probably had a moment, but I didn't care. I was still taking myself out, or attempting to. And then I heard this voice again, and it was calm. It was not judgmental or anything like that. It was very centered and grounded. My child, what are you doing? Well, can't you see what I'm doing? I'm taking myself out. I don't want to be here. And who wants me here anyway? My child, don't you know that I love you? Oh, how could you possibly love me? I'm not lovable. Continuing on, continuing on, continuing on. And one more time, my child, don't you know that I love you? And that light that had come through the sliding glass door and landed around me, it felt like the most incredible hug ever.
Wow.
And I surrendered because this voice was telling me I was lovable. And I had gotten through all the excuses, if you will, all the reasons that I wasn't lovable and there wasn't anything left. And how amazing that not a single thing I said was not true.
Wow. That's such a powerful thing. There's so many things about your story up to this point, and that one is obviously very, very powerful. And, sometimes when we get in our own head, we hear those, it's, you actually illustrated warrior versus zombie mindset, because our zombie mind tells us to avoid pain, tells us all the failures that we had in the past, keeps us safe, if you will. At least that's what the zombie mind is telling you. You can't push out beyond your comfort zone. You're not good enough. You're not worth it. You're not whatever. And I have to say, in full transparency, I sometimes wake up in the morning with that in my mind. It's just, it's not worth it, right? Why are you doing this? Nobody cares. Nobody appreciates. But one of the things I do is my morning routine, right? Is I pray, and I say, fill me with your spirit, fill me with this. And that goes away. It's like the light, the beam of light, that hug that you thought that it's that warrior inspiration that's in there that we all have. Especially I'm a Christian. I mean, as a Christian, I may not be great. I may be doing some really bad stuff myself, but I've always got something good in me, right? Because I have that spirit within me. So, well, that's powerful. Wow. I mean, I had a guest on the podcast, Frank King. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Frank Zakari has also been on my podcast, but Frank King, and he has chronic suicidality. He's a comedian. I don't know if you know Frank.
I do know Frank. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the thing that always has stuck with me, even in his story, was, the ease with which, I mean, to me, I can't imagine taking myself out. I've never really felt like that. I haven't been there. In honesty, I've never gotten that point, but I know I have a lot of friends who have, and somebody who is that disposed to ending their life. But he also says he's not, he's an atheist. He doesn't have that spiritual grounding. So that's one thing that we have going for us, even at our worst, right? So tell me, what else? Any other challenges along the way? Obviously, that's a huge one. That's a huge, and I'm thankful that you're here to talk to us.
Thank you. Me too. And when I pulled myself back together and accepted that love and that hug, the voice did speak one more time where he said, don't you know, I love you. I have great plans for you, and promise me you will never do this again. And thankfully, while I have gone through other struggles and challenges, I've never gone down that path again. And so again, super powerful. And it was a message because I was a young teenager at that time. And so when I was 16 and 17 and speaking in front of 500 to 1,500 fellow teenagers, I could speak to that we teenagers were so good. We're such pros at taking our little molehills of what we call problems and blowing them up into mountains. And I redirected that. And I said, what if we flipped that on its head and we took the molehill of what we think is good about ourselves and we blew that into mountains and owned our amazingness and our brilliance? And being able to take that message out is so fantastic. And a couple of years later, I encountered another hardship moment, if you will. And that was in dealing with a family member who I trusted pretty much with all of my life, and crossed the line of betrayal. And I was sexually abused for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
And the emotional, the physical is one thing. And yes, it was bad in what it was. I also at that time had a comparison, because when I was in therapy with other gals who had gone through sexual abuse, and I'm like, the things I had gone through, even physically, I'm like, it's nothing compared to what and I even got to this point of like, is my thing even really that bad? But the emotional part, the emotional betrayal was so much harder than the crossing of the physical line.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, because I had loved this person so much, I had to go through my journey of hardship with the betrayal, how my physical body was consumed with hate.
Wow.
And then to be able to ask God for grace so that I could, because all I wanted was to be able to love that person again. And I didn't think it was possible. And the only way that that is possible is through the power of forgiveness.
Yes.
And I did come to that in my journey. And it was long, it was hard, and took a lot of resilience from me.
Yeah.
And it definitely took a lot from my heart. And I would never, ever, there are times in our lives where we might be able to easily think, or even think that we feel it. Oh, I hate you. You know, there could be that. I would never wish the true feeling of hate upon anybody. It is such a horrible, horrible feeling to experience. And to be able to convert that into forgiveness and return it to love. It's not the same love, because that lack of trust is there, but there's still a love for that person. And again, I was a teenager at the time. So in my latter years into my young adulthood, when I was speaking out in the world to other youths, to other young adults, to other Christian communities, I would talk about this power of forgiveness. You know, is there such a thing as an unforgivable act? And people are going to come up with different situations. And this happened to be mine. And this was what I shared. And then to be able to say, but I have been able to come to this point of forgiveness. It's possible. And to be able to share that message. And, you know, what I've found, David, throughout my challenges is really learning the one thing in common in each of these hardships and obstacles and challenges and adversities, not only strength and resilience within ourselves, but we have a superpower of choice. We always have a choice. We can choose to be a victim. We can choose to be a victor. We can choose to stay stuck in that and let that identify who we are, define us. Or we can say, oh, I can overcome this, and this can actually shape me into a stronger, empowered human being. And this is what I chose. With my relationship with my God, I remember going through that, and I did question why. Why did this happen to me? And I came up with my own answer of the only reason I can think of, I trust that you, God, love me so much. The only thing that makes sense to me is you needed me to go through this, because somewhere, sometime later in my life is someone who needs to hear this. And that if this is something they're going through, that they can keep going through it and get to the other side, and they will be better for it. That's my seed of hope that I have been called to plant into others. And so that has allowed me to take the good, if you will, from that. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about relationships. I learned a lot about trust. I learned a lot about forgiveness and the power and all of that. Gosh, what else is there? Oh, here, let me give you a funny story, but it's still a challenge.
Okay.
This one, you may have heard before, David, is when I had my dream and my life plan all put together.
Mhm.
I was in college and I was pursuing becoming a corporate motivational speaker. I was double majoring in communications and psychology. I was taking interpersonal communication as well as public speaking classes, and I was loving it. And I thought, I know what I want to do. I'm going to be a corporate motivational speaker so that I can do the impact. I will raise employee morale. And when I do that, I'll raise productivity and that will raise the bottom line. And these CEOs of these corporations, they're just going to love me. And I will get to travel. And at that time, I only had the US in my mind. I'm like, I'll get to travel to all these states and be able to have all of these different experiences and take my message out there and create that impact. And I'll make really good money doing this because I hear that speakers make really good money. This is what I'll do. So I'll live on what I need and I'll put the rest aside so that later, eventually, when I get married and eventually I get to become a mom, I can be a stay-at-home mom and I won't be a financial burden to the family when we go down to that one income. Everything's all lined up. I hadn't found my husband yet, but it's just like, okay, I have the plan. And if you want to make God laugh, if you want to make the universe laugh, yeah, tell them your plans.
Right.
So that's what I did. And how did that laugh come through? Oof. It came through in the form of a massive car accident. I was in the hospital for 11 days with multiple fractures. And then it took me 3 months to recover. And I even had to learn how to walk again. And that was a moment that pivoted so much for me. One of the things, the starting point there for me was because all I could do was sit on the couch, and I don't sit still very well. All I could do was sit on the couch and I would either read books, read magazines, or watch TV. And still being a young adult, I was very much a night owl, and I stayed up watching TV and the late night infomercials. And I know I'm dating myself, but that's okay. And I discovered Tony Robbins because this was when he was first putting out his personal power. And I bought the tapes, I did his 30-day program, and I thought, who is this guy? What is he doing? And how do I get to do what he's doing? And that story really goes to show that whatever you are doing out in the world, whatever it is that you are contributing, it may not be as big as something as a television infomercial, but the things that you do, you never know who it's going to impact or when that impact is really going to go into full bloom. And this was in my early 20s when this happened. And so Tony Robbins opened the door for me to this personal growth development. And I then jumped into Zig Ziglar and Og Mandino and Norman Vincent Peale, Dale Carnegie, all of those amazing thought leaders, of course, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and all of these different mentors, if you will, for me. And I thought, wow, these are such powerful messages. Okay, what's a message I can take? I know I'm meant to be a speaker. How do I do this? And what is the message that I'm meant to take out in the world? And from the car accident, I recovered. I went back to school and put myself in burnout because I was going to school and working 3 part-time jobs, had no social life because it was all I could do to just keep up with my bills. And found myself calling up my dad one day and begging him, how do I get out of here? I need to travel. I have no money right now to travel, but I just need to get out of here. I'm just drowning in the trees growing up in the Southeast. And I need a break. I need a break. And I was never the kid to ask for money and things like that. So I told my dad, like, I just, can you brainstorm an idea for me? And at the time he was working in Southern California, but he had been in the Reno area. And he said, well, I have connections in Reno. And I said, make it happen. It wasn't, let me think about it. Let me do some research because that's not who I am. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and make a decision and run with it. And whatever happens, happens. And sure enough, I said, yeah, make it happen. And he did. And I came out between Memorial Day and a little bit after July 4th. So I was out here for close to 2 months. And yeah, little Southern gal coming out to the desert. And all I brought with me were tank tops and shorts and flip-flops. And folks, Reno is known as what is high elevation desert, which means it can snow in June. And it did. And here I am in just shorts and t-shirt. I didn't have anything. It was like, wait, what? And you can't get winter coats at that time because everything's on bikinis and the shorts and
Right.
so that was a fun experiment. And when I went back home after those 2 months, I heard the voice again, the one that had saved me right from my suicide attempt and had popped up several times throughout my life. In fact, one little side note here: when my car accident happened, I'll spare you the backstory, but the detail that happened was I fell asleep at the wheel. And when I was going off the road, I kind of came to for a moment, but there was a voice on my left shoulder, gentle as can be, and it said to me, "No, not yet. Go back to sleep." No idea where this voice came from. I suspect it's a guardian angel. And it said, "No, not yet. Go back to sleep." And so I did. And it's thankful that I did, because when I went back later after I fully recovered and saw where I went off the road and where I hit the bridge abutment, it was a very short distance. So had I been fully awake, I would have, jarred myself, and that probably would have been the end of me.
Oh,
Because I listened to that voice that was protecting me. I was relaxed. And so I just, naturally bounced back from that moment of impact. So moving forward, I had spent this time in Reno, gone back home. The voice shows up again and says, "You need to go out west." Wait, what? You need to go out west. But why? I just went out there for a vacation, for a break. My family, I've been here for 20 plus years, and in my foundation of friends, everybody I know, my whole support system is here.
right.
And the voice kept telling me, "You need to go out west." And I prayed on that, David, for 2 solid months. And I kept questioning and kept questioning. And then I was even afraid of the questioning, because if you recall in the multiple Bible stories, when the angels would appear and anybody who questioned the angels, something bad could happen. And I thought, oh no, if I'm asking too much why, maybe something bad is going to happen to me. But I did hear, after those 2 months, I did hear, "Really? Are you sure?" And putting all my questions out there. And I heard this, "Go and don't ask me again." I said, okay, surrender again, right? And I did. And then once I moved out here 5 years later, I met my husband. We were friends, and then we dated, and then we got married. And then a year and a half later, I was able to get pregnant, became a mom. I got to fulfill that dream as a stay-at-home mom. Yes, it took sacrifice, because no, I didn't have the corporate motivational money. That didn't happen. But life was wonderful. But that was another challenge, maybe not as a traumatic, but moving across the country to a place where, I only had a few friends, had no family support, but it was such a change. But it was a change for a blessing. And, we can define our own difficulties.
Sure.
And it's the meaning that we put to it that will determine just how difficult it becomes. We can create our own little molehills, or we can create our own mountains. Again, we have that superpower, right? And say, all right, well, here's a challenge. Yes, it's definitely pushing me outside of my comfort zone, but I'm going to embrace it with a sense of adventure, and I'm going to try to soak up as much of the goodness as I can from it. And from there, with marrying my husband, here's one final story for you. Marrying my husband, I came into a blended family because he had been married before, and his son was 5 at the time that we walked down the aisle. And with that, yes, I became a stay-at-home mom a year and a half later once I had my daughter. And there were little complications here and there, working with the other set of parents, the back and forth with the joint custody, me stepping into full motherhood with my little one and raising her, and then still trying to make my marriage the way I want it to be. And then life happens as life happens. And the first 13 years, I would say there were lots of challenges that happened throughout that too, but there were so many just amazing things. And I was loving every day being a stay-at-home mom. But then after some time, the little things did start to compound. And then there was a moment when we were together on holiday as a family in 2016 in Hawaii. We were blessed with this incredible vacation, 23 days across 4 islands. And if you've ever been blessed to go to Hawaii, you know those are some of the most amazing sunsets on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an evening we were on the beach and watching one of the glorious sunsets. And I say, yes, it was the golden orb setting on the sapphire horizon and the water lapping softly at our feet and the breeze caressing our hair. And my husband's up front and he's got his camera and he's like trying to get the lens just right to capture the right light. So the lens is sticking out of his face like the nose of Pinocchio. And my daughter was a young teenager and she's cradled in my arm and we're having this tender mother-daughter moment. And to the other side of me is my stepson, who is now out of the house, but he had come on the trip with his girlfriend and they're having a sweet moment between the two of them. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, 23 days, 4 islands. I'm having this experience that most people don't even get once in a lifetime, coming to one island, let alone all 4. And then I realized, David, that I was only thinking that. Here I am, this blessed human being in a moment of paradise, true paradise. And I was only thinking that I'm having an experience. And when I became aware that I was just thinking this, I wasn't feeling that moment, I was like, whoa, back up. What's happening right here, right now? And this is all happening in my head. What is happening right now? This is not who I am. I am the person who feels and embraces, and I get really present in the moment and I soak that up. So what's happening right now? And that's when I became aware that I had been depressed. I was in a massive, massive depression. I was in a strained relationship with my husband. I was in a strange relationship with my stepson. And I was encountering those teenage years with my daughter and the difficulties that come with that. And I realized I got caught up in the day-to-day of being a stay-at-home mom that I had lost that being present. And so many things had compounded and I lost who I was. And I like to share the story that I was covered in dust. And that's like dust with a J, that I was just a wife. I was just a stepmom. I was just a mother. I was just a daughter, just a sister, just a woman standing there in this empty human shell without any feeling going on. No, this is not what life is about, especially in a moment like this.
Right.
And I said, enough is enough. And knowing that I have that power of choice, this was when I said, okay, enough is enough. We're at the end of a year. A new year is getting ready to start. And I don't care how selfish it seems to anybody else. I am going on a quest to figure out what makes me happy. Because I was so clueless in that moment in time. And when I came back stateside, I had chosen a word for myself. It was a practice I had heard my friends doing, but I had never tried it before. So I chose the word laugh because I couldn't remember when was the last time I genuinely laughed. And I thought, well, laugh makes you feel good. Laughter is the best medicine, so they say. So let's give this a try. And initially, I was trying to break out of that physiological state of depression. So I started on the corner of the couch, watching reruns of Friends because that's my favorite sitcom. 6 characters. I know all the lines. And even though I know all the lines in the next scene that's coming, I would bust up laughing. Okay, that's a start. And then there was a local comedy troupe that those first 3 months put on an improv show every Friday, and they were geniuses. They were so brilliant. So almost every Friday or weekend, I was down front and center, and I was warming up my sides, and I was warming up my cheeks, and I was laughing. And then the third thing that I did was, because I was networking in the community with business owners and whatnot, I knew the people who had an amazing sense of humor. And if you're like me, you know, when you get in that space with those people, that energy tends to rub off on you. Sure. And that was my hope. And so after several months of doing these laugh activities for myself, an amazing thing happened. I felt this crack in my heart, and it felt like this mud of darkness and depression was just crumbling away. And then a light was coming through my heart, and I felt like it was this gold liquid. It was just warm and beautiful, and it was sliding up and it came into my left ear, and I just could feel this lightness. And I heard this whisper of, now that I'm here, what do you want to do with me? And I recognized that as joy. I'm like, I found my joy again. And okay, yes, life is getting better. I'm breaking out of this depression. I'm doing things for myself and becoming who I know I'm meant to be again. Okay, yes, now what? Yes, joy. What do I want to do with you? And behind that, I heard this little girl's laughter, and it was that 8-year-old, that confident reader. And she said, "Remember that feeling? Let's go chase that feeling again." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's right. When I became a mom, even though I still did some speaking as a mom in mother's ministries, I stuck a pen in that speaker dream. And I thought, oh, yes, let's go chase that feeling. So I took the pen out from that dream and I'm like, all right, what do I do now? Let's go start speaking. And I just looked in, if you want to go looking for trouble, you'll find it.
Yeah.
Guess what else? If you want to go looking for opportunity, you will find those too. So yeah, David, anywhere I could get my hands on a speaking opportunity, that's what I would do. And that's the short of the long, the long of the short.
And that's what you're doing today, right? So let's do this. That's great. There's so many, and I could tell you, by the way, Hawaii did it to me too. So we don't have the time for me to tell you the story, but sometimes I'll tell you the story of what my wake up call was. It occurred in Hawaii with my family and 2 other families. And it made me realize some things very similar to what you're talking about. But anyway, let's do this. I want to take the break. I want to come back. I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing today, which is obviously speaking. I know you got a book, that kind of stuff. And then we'll have to move into the final segment. But let's talk and take a quick break, hear a little more of our theme song. It's Not the Getting There. And we'll be right back with Lee Smith.
It's
and
not a
versus
race
Zombie.
to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth are always 2 different games.
Okay. So a lot of journey there, and it's so cool. And I could, like I said, I can tell we're very aligned, and we've also had our journeys of, and I do believe that. I do believe our story informs what we do, and we can't help the people that we are helping today if we don't sometimes go through those challenging times. Because I know myself, back in 2008, 2009, I went through a pretty horrendous financial situation. And at that point in time, I'd never really, other than when I was growing up, had never really experienced what you would call financial hardship. Mm-hmm. And so if it weren't for that, I couldn't serve a lot of the people I serve today. So tell me, why are you doing what you're doing today?
Yes. Well, I hope some of my story resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
I hope some of my story drops a seed of hope for you. Like, oh, wow, some of my challenges aren't that hard, but you got through it, so maybe I can get through it. And I've believed ever since I was a little girl and started my storytelling that everybody has a story. I have been fascinated by other people's stories. And I believed it even before Oprah Winfrey said it. Okay.
Right.
There was a time, yes, that Oprah Winfrey says everybody has a story, and you do. And I believed this ever since I was a little girl. And I thought, well, what if there was a way we could hear everybody's stories? What would we learn about that person? Because when we're walking down the street, David, if we encounter each other, I don't know your story.
Right.
If I don't know you. And if I see a smile on your face, I don't know truly what you're happy about. If I see a frown on your face, I don't know what that story is either. And it's not my place to make any assumptions about that. But if I know your story, I might have a little insight, and I might find that place of compassion and that place of understanding. And then it's easier for me to be kind to you, which I should be anyway. I totally get that. But let's talk about overall human behavior. And so if I know your story, I can find that place of loving you in your space, that compassion, the empathy, and the sympathy, if nothing else. And in learning your story, I get to learn about myself as well. Because just like you said right here, right now, gosh, Lee, hearing your story, I can hear the parallels, I can hear the commonalities, and you can hear the differences of what makes me, me, and you.
Right.
And that's the beauty of stories. So I believe that, yes, everybody has a story, and that story is worth telling because there are people who need to hear that story, either for their own personal development journey or just to be in that space of, I'm not alone. Somebody else is going through this. Oh, there's hope. They got through to the other side. Okay, maybe they can help me get through that faster and easier. And just the beauty of humanity through our stories. And so as a speaker, I want to share my stories and coaching other people that I believe have a story to tell, and they want to be able to tell it. They're just part of that 77% who have glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. As the joke goes, they would rather be in the casket at the funeral than the one giving the eulogy.
That's right.
And I get that. And yes, even though I've been a confident speaker from the get-go, the one place where I wasn't confident was getting on camera. When Facebook Lives became a thing, oh my gosh, if you looked back at my very first one, I had a pumpkin head over my head. And I was like, boo, oh wait, don't be scared, it's just me. But I needed those first few seconds before I could even stand to look at myself on camera. And I had a lot of ums and buts and so's, those types of things. And I had to work through that. So there was a level of confidence that, yes, you could throw me on stage and I could speak up in front of people all too well. But in front of a camera, like we're doing right here, right now, that was a struggle. And I had to build my confidence to make that happen. And so wherever you are on your sphere or your scale of confidence, say between 0 and 10, wherever you are, I would love to bring you into my space. Let me nurture you, nurture your confidence so that you know that you have genius, you have gifts, you have greatness to give, you have an amazing story to tell that needs to be heard. And only the way that you can say it and create that impact. And then together, we get to change the world positively, lovingly. And we're not just impacting our audience who hears it when they take it into their relationships and they retell the stories. Oh my gosh, I heard this amazing speaker today, the story that they shared. Wow. And so then the listener to that story, there's an impact that's there. So we're creating these ripples.
Sure.
And like Tony Robbins, like he's never met me in person, but he created an impact on me over 30 years ago. And now we have that same opportunity. And dare I say, we have that same responsibility that if we have that story within us, we need to be taking it out into the world. And it could be like a podcast like this. It could be just in your family circle, or it could be ambitiously like me, where I'm speaking on a multimedia platform that has the intention of reaching 3.9 billion women and girls across the planet. And that is why I do what I do, David, because I believe you have a story. There's a responsibility to take it out. And so if I can help you with that confidence part so that you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. And you go out and you share that story, that impact is made.
Well, I love that. And I love the 3.9 billion. Okay. So that's, and targeting the women and stuff in your life. Actually, some of my most avid listeners include my daughters. I know my daughter Hannah, and you mentioned Friends, and she has all the Friends memorized. So you guys would get along well. So I can't wait for her to hear this podcast and know. But there's so many things, and the impact is obviously well beyond even the one-to-ones here. So I'm glad we're able to get your message out. Well, let's do this. We're going to take one more break. And then when I come back, there's so many nuggets. There's so many what I call warrior nuggets that you shared. but I'd like you kind of come back when we come back. Just give me, if we take away one thing or any small part of that, what do you want to make sure we take away? And then we'll talk about how to stay in touch. So let's take a quick break. Hear the final snippet of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back with Lee Smith and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God, on down the road we go.
All right, Lee, good energy, a lot of stuff. We have so many things in common. I just can't even. We could spend 3 or 4 episodes just talking about all the things that we've learned through similar but different experiences along the way. But tell me, as I said before the break, if we take away anything from this podcast, from our discussion here, whether it's your story or what you're doing today, what would you want us to take away?
I, number one, would want you to take away that you have a superpower. And that superpower is the power of choice. You get to choose how you want to respond to any moment in life, good, bad, or indifferent. And so you can't, like I said, you can choose to be a victim, a victor. You can choose to see something as good or bad. Everything only has what meaning you give to it. And I have taken some situations in my life that happen in the moment, and sometimes I'll ask myself, can I see that in a different way? Because maybe I had a negative impulse. Well, what would be the opposite of that? What could be the positive of that? And when we look for the good, more good things happen in our life. So recognizing that you have that superpower of choice, you can choose to be positive or negative. And I encourage you to step into the choice of empowerment, the choice of positivity. Number 2 is recognizing, find a way to recognize, you can do it with me, but even for yourself, recognize that you have 3 G's. You have genius, you have gifts, and you have greatness to give the world. And I invite you to have a conversation with me sometime to take that a little bit deeper. And what does that really look like? And what I love about those 3 G's, it's similar, I think of it to a cell phone. 95% of the 7 billion people across the planet have a cell phone.
Right.
And then when you think about that, there are no 2 numbers, cell phone numbers, that are exactly alike. That's incredible. Incredible. We all have common digits 0 through 9, but the combination that they're in is unique to us. And this is what happens with the 3 G's. So there may be some commonalities out there with the genius, the gifts, and the greatness, but you have your own unique combination. And this is what you get to take out into the world. And then lastly, David, I'd love to share my mission. And that is, I am personally on a mission to transform the reactor into the creator. And I know most of the people attending this podcast that are doing it audibly, they're listening to it. So when you get a moment, friends, write down those 2 words, reactor and creator. And the reactor is a person who believes that life is happening to them. And they're trying to set goals and do something with their life, but really they're busy. Why are they busy? Because they're putting out fire after fire after fire, whatever is coming at them and happening to them as they believe it. And so they're pulled in different directions, and they just see themselves stuck in the middle of all the things. And if you look at the word reactor, the letter C is stuck right smack dab in the middle. And I create the transformation by taking that C, getting you out from the middle of all those things and seeing yourself for the amazingness that you are. And when you can see all of that and you own it and you step into that power and you see yourself first, now we take that C and we can be the creator. and we recognize what's important to us, what matters to us, what becomes priority. What is that dream that I must fulfill? What is that book that I must write? What is that story that I must be out telling into the world? And you don't see life happening to you, you see life happening for you. Just like I shared today with all of my various stories. And we then become the creator of the dream, the life, the day of the life that we truly desire. Nobody else telling us what to do. It's like, no, this is how I am going to live my life. And you go out and you do that and you create magnificent things.
I love it. And for those that are listening to this podcast, we also did a mastermind a couple of weeks ago with Lee, and she illustrated some of that. And if you want to hear a little bit more, but tell us now, this has been so powerful. And I love that, don't be a reactor. Don't be a victim, be a victor. Take control, warrior all the way through. So how do we stay in touch? You'll be on the Be Connected platform. You're on the YouTube channel. There's a couple of places they can find you there, but how do we stay in touch?
Yes. And I will
talk about your book, by the way. Yeah, you got a book on us.
I am a 4-time published author. I'm a 4-time best-selling author and a 2-time international best-selling author as of late. My most recent work is they're all collaborative efforts, is Relentless. And you can find that on Amazon. Thank you for mentioning that, David.
Yeah.
And just what a thrill to be in that book with 20 other powerful storytellers and authors, some of them for the first time. It's their first publication, and just a fantastic journey. And I am on the major social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. The best way to find me, though, where I spend the majority of my social media time, if you want to call it that, is on Facebook. I have a free Facebook group where every Tuesday I drop a short video, Talk Tuesday with Lee, where I try to share a fun tip, because if it's not fun, I don't think it's worth doing. Then I try to share a short tip that can help you have a quick win with your public speaking. And your speaking can be just in a relationship, or it can be in front of a group of people. And so that Facebook group is called Speaking Confidently with Lee, and Lee is spelled L-Y. So that's the best place to find me on Facebook.
Well, that's awesome. And yeah, I joined that group myself and peek in on you there. And I can tell you've got a lot of good energy and a lot of stories and things to offer to the folks that come into your sphere. And I just love that about Warriors, is we're always trying to pay it forward. And I love your vision. So, well, we're going to have to land the plane, as I say. And I sure appreciate you, Lee, being here today and serving our audience. But we're going to have to land the plane for this week, and we'll come back next week with another warrior. But thank you again.
Thank you, David. It's been my honor and pleasure.
It's been a blast, and I see a lot of good things ahead. So let's hear the final outro of It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be back next Friday with another episode of Versus Zombie.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.